The latest StevenBomb, Heart of the Crystal Gems, has started off very strong with the latest episode, Now We're Only Falling Apart. An episode which follows immediately from the events of A Single Pale Rose. Garnet and Amethyst, of course, heard at the end of A Single Pale Rose that Rose was Pink Diamond all along. Naturally, they sit down and ask for clarification, and Steven gives it to them, causing Garnet to defuse. Sapphire being visibly upset by all of this, revealing that she was so enamored by Rose that she never bothered to use her abilities to look into the truth of what Rose was telling her. She is hurt by the fact that Rose lied to her for so long and blames herself in part because she feels that she should have seen through Rose's lies. And this is affecting her so strongly because she got validation for her long-term relationship with Ruby from Rose, and now feels like that validation isn't worth as much. Now, I think it's pretty obvious from the very beginning of this episode that she's having something of a knee-jerk reaction to this, that she is reacting so strongly in the moment due to the sheer emotional overload of everything. And so it does make sense when, unfortunately, still reacting in a very impulsive, knee-jerk sort of way, she insults Ruby and then teleports away via the warp pad. Ruby is of course heartbroken by this, but Pearl and Steven say that they will go and find Sapphire and bring her back, leaving Amethyst behind with Ruby, though that doesn't end up amounting to much later on, as we'll see. And after apparently searching for a while, they find Sapphire at Rose's fountain, which makes this the second time that we've seen it, which was a nice nod to continuity. And Sapphire is reacting very much like we, the audience, have been since the reveal, which I will be talking about in just a little while. And so Pearl tells her story, the rest of her story, to both Sapphire and Steven, further putting things into context. She tells of her time with Pink Diamond in the early days of the colony, showing us that Pink Diamond was, from the very beginning, very different than the other diamonds. It is revealed that it is considered taboo in some way for a diamond to interact directly with their colony, or at the very least, the soldier gems emerging in their colony. And so at this stage in the colony's development, it would have been considered in some way taboo for Pink Diamond to go down there. That she worried what would happen if she went down to her colony and that information got back to Blue and Yellow. So it's actually Pearl who suggests that she shapeshift into a quartz, go down and interact with her quartz gems as their equal. We're also treated to a bit of homeworld rhetoric, that kindergartening creates life from nothing, or at least that's seemingly what the diamonds tell themselves. But when Pink Diamond enjoys the experience of going down to her kindergarten so much that she decides to explore the rest of her world, discovering the life that's already there, she realizes that they're not creating life from nothing, that they're creating life from other life. It's an epiphany for her, and we get to see her have that epiphany. We're shown yet again that she tried to convince Blue and Yellow to let her stop colonizing the Earth, but they just kept pressuring her to do so. And so in response to that, she rebelled as a quartz gem with Pearl at her side to try to drive the diamonds away herself, leading to the events in the answer when she saw Ruby and Sapphire fuse, realized that it was possible for gems of different types to fuse, which is apparently something she never knew, despite the fact that she was a diamond, and so became inspired not just to fight for the Earth, but to fight for gems who were different. That she wasn't motivated entirely by her desire to protect the Earth, that concern for other gems was part of that, which, after the whole Rose Diamond reveal, is something which had come into doubt. This is exactly the episode that we needed 2 months ago. This episode did a lot of great stuff, recontextualizing things further and restoring a lot of Rose's goodwill. But it came just a little too late. People have left this show because of the Pink Diamond reveal and what it insinuated about Rose's character. I know a couple of those people personally. And while some of those people will come back because they'll recognize that this isn't entirely the crew's fault, this is in part to do with the terrible scheduling that Cartoon Network gives this show. Others won't. Others won't see the distinction and will have left the show for good because we didn't get this episode for 2 months after the episode which came immediately before it. Now, I have some major problems with the pacing of Steven Universe lately. I honestly think there was a lot more that the crew could have done to lay the foundation for the big Rose Diamond reveal. I mean, above and beyond just leaving hints that they were the same person, because there were already a ton of those. I'm talking about groundwork, laying a foundation, which would help cushion the blow of the reveal and help us transition into this new era of the show. Maybe dropping a suggestion at some point that possibly, just possibly, despite the fact that Pink Diamond fought to get a colony, she at some point, for some reason, wanted to stop colonizing the Earth. Stage it so that we can infer that she was just lazy, or petty. Give us something that, when we found out that Rose and Pink Diamond were the same person, we could look back on and say, oh, that makes a whole lot more sense now. Or in the case of a particular reveal that we got in this episode, that it was actually Blue Diamond and Yellow Diamond who built the zoo to try to placate Pink Diamond. That it was her facility, but only because they gave it to her, putting the first human prisoners there themselves. There is a perfect opportunity for them to have laid the groundwork for that reveal. Back in Adventures in Light Distortion, when Garnet was talking about the villainous Pink Diamond's insidious human zoo. Recall that after she said that, Pearl chimed in to agree with her that the zoo was horrible, and lament the fact that the crystal gems were never able to save the people there. All they would have had to do was, before Pearl said any of that, have her offhandedly mention that technically Blue Diamond and Yellow Diamond built the zoo for Pink Diamond. It would have come off as just the kind of offhanded fact that Pearl spouts all the time. But when it was revealed that Pink and Rose were the same person, people would have remembered that line of Pearl's and realized that she wasn't at fault for that, at least not directly. And if they still wrote and paced the show like they did back in season 1, I think that's probably what would have happened. But the pacing on this show has gotten poor, and that cannot be blamed entirely on the network. Yes, Cartoon Network's poor scheduling of Steven Universe exacerbates that, but I do think the show has been decreasing in quality, and part of that is on the writing. Which is not to say that this episode didn't also have its brilliant bits of writing. I already mentioned that Sapphire is framed as if she's a member of the audience reacting very negatively to this reveal, showing that the crew did anticipate a negative reaction to it and planned this episode to soften that blow for such people. They didn't even put 3 or 4 Townie episodes between the reveal and this episode, showing that they understood how important it was for us to get this information immediately after we saw a single pale rose. And it is the fault of the network that we didn't. But even understanding that, I don't see why this wasn't the same episode as a single pale rose. I don't understand why this wasn't the second half of a 22-minute episode. These episodes were obviously written to be companions to one another, so why didn't they just write them as a half-hour special? Cartoon Network eats those up, and it would have assured that Cartoon Network would air both episodes back-to-back. And no, it wasn't so that it could be the first episode in this new bomb, because the crew has said multiple times that they don't write the series with bombs in mind. It just feels like a misstep that could have been avoided, considering that the crew does know how Cartoon Network tends to treat them. And I do applaud this episode for not trying to turn Rose into an entirely heroic and sympathetic figure, instead just restoring her to the type of character that we already assumed that she was before the reveal. Like, Pearl at the end of this episode even says that maybe Rose was selfish, but it is so much more clear now, after having seen what we saw in this episode, that she was well-meaning, even if she didn't make the best choices all the time and was kind of selfish, which is stuff that we already knew about Rose before all of this. Now, granted, even showing more confrontations between Pink and the other diamonds about the colony still doesn't answer the question as to why rebelling in the guise of rose quartz was the only option that she saw for getting rid of them. Yeah, Pearl says that Blue and Yellow didn't respect Pink's authority, but at the very least, there is another diamond that she could have gone to. We know that the diamonds had the ability to contact each other directly. So at the very least, she had the option of contacting White Diamond too, and yet that's never mentioned. So I still think we have to keep asking the question of whether or not Rose had other options, whether or not there was another approach that she could have taken, one which would have cost fewer lives. And killing off her Pink Diamond persona was still a mistake, one that I still think she probably shouldn't have reasonably made. But as I've said in recent videos, it's obvious that she wasn't thinking reasonably when she made it. So that makes sense. And now that we have seen that she did genuinely care about the people on Earth, now that we've seen that she did genuinely care about her fellow gems, and now that we've seen just how well she treated Pearl, I'm more inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt in regards to this other thing. I am more willing to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume that maybe she was right, that rebelling in the guise of rose quartz was her best option. That's what I meant when I said that this episode restored a lot of Rose's goodwill. I am now more inclined to give her the benefit of the doubt, as I was before the reveal happened. Now, that's not to say that this episode is without its flaws. First of all, I don't think it's the best episode of the series, as some fans have been saying. I guarantee all of you who feel that way right now, once you have let this episode sink in and go back to watch it again, you won't feel that way, because right now you're just riding high on the fact that this episode cleared up so much. Yes, getting to see Rose and Pearl interact directly for such a long period of time was a real treat, and the animation was nice at several points throughout this episode, but there are episodes of the show which are objectively better in quality than this one. For example, there are some continuity issues in this episode. The episode makes it seem as if Rose only explores the Earth for a short period of time before falling in love with it, which just doesn't make a lot of sense. It also doesn't show her interacting directly with any humans, despite the fact that we know that she did. And it makes it seem like she and Pearl bumped into Garnet again down in the jungle on Earth's surface, a very short time after Rose, Pearl, Ruby, and Sapphire all left the Sky Arena. Despite the fact that in Garnet's version of events, we saw that Ruby and Sapphire spent at least an evening, a night, and part of the next day together as Ruby and Sapphire before fusing into Garnet again. Now, granted, all of this can be explained away by the fact that Pearl is telling us a very condensed version of events, but I still would have expected Pearl of all people to mention when she is condensing down time frames. Though I will also freely admit that while the conversation that Rose and Pearl were shown to have had after they left the Sky Arena and the answer could have taken place over the course of many days or even many weeks, that it didn't all have to happen at once as we were shown in the flashback, condensing it down so that at the very least it appeared to helped keep the episode snappy and energetic, and could be a genuine example of the crew using the fact that we're seeing things through Steven's perspective to their benefit to keep their episodes snappy and energetic. Because remember, as Pearl is recounting these events, we're seeing them as Steven is imagining them. I also didn't like the admittedly subtle implications that there was a romance and possibly even a physical relationship between Pearl and Rose back during the war, because regardless of how well Rose treated Pearl, all of the criticisms that I've made of their relationship still stand. Rose still literally owned Pearl, even before we knew that Rose literally owned Pearl. Past episodes have made it so clear that there was a huge power disparity between the two of them that I would have questioned whether or not they could have ever had a healthy, balanced relationship even before the Rose Diamond reveal. And I'm sorry, but showing that Rose treated Pearl well, and maybe even returned Pearl's feelings, does not change that. I still assert, with my entire being, that the two of them never could have had a romantic relationship in which they were truly, unquestionably equals, calling into question whether or not Pearl ever could have consented to a physical relationship with Rose. But the instances where we see evidence of a relationship between them are pretty sparse and can be interpreted in multiple ways. In the first instance, we see Pearl, after seeing Ruby and Sapphire fuse, trying to fuse with Rose, and admitting to Rose that she's been imagining the two of them running off together and escaping Homeworld's clutches for a long time now. At which point she apologizes for that and, in a very automatic sort of way, insists that she needs to be replaced with a different Pearl, only for Rose to reassure her that no, she doesn't, that Rose likes her this way, that Rose prefers her as her own independent person, at which point they almost fuse, but don't. Now, if we do assume that fusion in this instance is representative of a physical relationship, this could be seen as the two of them coming close to, for lack of a better term, having sex. But Rose realizing that they shouldn't. That Rose, realizing all of the problems with that, loses the desire to fuse, they desync from one another, and the fusion fails before it can even happen. Then there's a line at the end where Sapphire points out that Rose was swept off her feet by Pearl. That doesn't necessarily have to have a romantic connotation. And even if it does, Pearl's reaction does seem to suggest that even if Rose was interested in her romantically, she never acted on that. It's all very subtle, but I appreciate that it's there nonetheless, as it really does come off as Rose did have romantic feelings for Pearl, but realized that they could never go forward with that relationship, and so put a stop to it. I still question why she seemingly never told that to Pearl, but it does at the very least mean that Rose knew what was up. I also absolutely love what this episode does for Pearl's character. I mentioned that the reveal that Rose was Pink Diamond and therefore literally Pearl's owner called into question whether or not Pearl did any of the stuff that she did during wartime of her own volition. That the reveal might very well erase all of the amazing things that she supposedly did during the war. And despite the fact that we did see Rose use her power over Pearl to quite literally brainwash Pearl into not being able to make a choice, that she did quite literally rob Pearl of a small part of her freedom, and that was still very wrong. This episode did prove definitively that Pearl was the badass that we were always told she was during the war. Not only was she actually a renegade, a Pearl who acknowledged the fact that she had her own independent thoughts and ideas, but we also get to see that she had the courage, or the recklessness, or the stupidity, or however you want to say it, to voice those ideas to her diamond. It was her idea for Pink to become a quartz and go down to Earth. And therefore Pearl, because of her unique rebellious attitude as a Pearl, is responsible for the rebellion. Pearl is the inspiration for Rose, not the other way around. Pearl is the first crystal gem. So not only does this episode restore any lost characterization that the Pink Diamond reveal might have taken away from Pearl, it also gives her a whole buttload more. It makes her out to be even more impressive than we already thought that she was, and at the end, it's clear that she never even thought of herself that way. At the end of the day, this episode served to further recontextualize things, to, in many ways, redeem the character of Rose, and also show definitively that Rose was just as inspired by the people around her as they were inspired by her. It's everything that I could have hoped for in the follow-up to A Single Pale Rose, and then some. The episode itself also ends on a cliffhanger. Sapphire realizes that she was acting in a very impulsive, knee-jerk way, and that she was very harsh on Ruby, and so returns home immediately after hearing this story to try to make amends, but Ruby has already left, leaving her a letter, the contents of which we don't see before the episode ends, which I honestly think is a much better cliffhanger than
Mama's Pink Diamond.
What?
Like, if the show went on hiatus after this cliffhanger, I'd be bummed out, but I wouldn't be as angry, for lack of a better term, than I was after the last one. I have more stuff that I could say about this episode, but this review's already gone on for long enough, so I'm going to go ahead and call it here. Guys, what did you think of this episode if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.